I just did a VOD review of a bunch of players that placed at the very top of the first Elite Cup finals. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything I learned from this 3-hour VOD review session as quick as possible. Let's hop into it, starting with Clix and Dukes, who got first place on the NA East. The first clip here is a really good example of how to get a refresh as a duo. As soon as the zone pulls back, Dukes knows that they have plenty of time to frag, and he knows there's somebody in that general area, so he says, "On me." He takes his time, identifies where he is, and then they're just both there for a quick double pump kill. Here, they're low on Surge, and they're in a fight with two different teams. Clix gets a ton of Surge, but he's in the middle of all the mess, so Dukes is about to get in, but then he realizes, like, we got the Surge we need, maybe he should just get out, and he comes, "Can you get out?" The reason I clipped this is because a lot of times in this type of situation, I'll just jump in when I see Kenbeans is in, but sometimes you just gotta take a second and be like, yo, can we reset? And that saved them here. Here, Clix and Dukes had to scale Rave Cave. And a lot of times when the zone scales over a mountain like this, it seems a lot more difficult than it is. Look at how few mats Dukes uses to get up all these layers. He only had like 100 mats, he gets almost all the way up, and then he just chills until Clix can catch up and frags a little bit. I'd say the biggest thing to note is that if you notice it's going up Rave Cave earlier on, the rotate can be pretty easy, just like it was here. He just went up, 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 and it looked like a piece of cake. The absolute biggest thing that I took away from watching Clix and Dukes though, was that they basically did really good in every single game from just ratting through old builds. Like 2/3 of their games were solo clutches where they're just ratting through old builds and sneaking up on players. A lot of the end games, they had no mats going into like third moving, and so they would just rat through builds and they'd get a massive refresh that saves their game. This is just a big reminder that especially in a stacked lobby, if you're low on mats, just get in somebody else's builds, and a lot of times it may save your life. Next up, we're moving over to EU and checking out Mappy. In the first clip, they pulled half and half zone here. They see all these chrome ballers coming nearby their base, and they see that as an opportunity. He literally sprints out of his box with the mindset that he's going to box one of these chrome ballers, and they get a kill. So they end up full tarping the first moving zone, and immediately as they get in, they go off to the side one box. And this gives them a perfect peek to the back edge of zone. On top of that, while they're tarping to this zone, they're just constantly going up layers, paying attention to the landforms that are way ahead of them. Even though this uses a ton of mats, it sets them up in a great place to 1, get kills, and 2, right here, they go to flank height. The only reason they were able to do this was because they got up layers in that first moving, and they were super aware of what was going on around them. While they're on height here, they get chopped, and while they're going to reconnect before all their builds break, they get cranked over top of. But they were close together and got a really fast kill on one of them. And this is what's interesting. They don't just build up on the solo. One person builds up on the solo and PKR says, "Don't get one pumped, I'm going to reclaim front edge of zone." And this makes it so that somebody won't crank up on front edge of zone and just spray back at them while they're killing the solo. He makes sure they're solidified because he's not so worried about a solo, he's more worried about a new duo approaching their height. It's just so clear that these guys are insane because of the way they play high ground. In Elite, kills are worth a lot of points, so they're trying to be very synchronized on who they're looking at from height. PKR will literally say, "Drop what you're doing and just stare at this." And they comment multiple times so that they're on the same page at all moments in time. And that's how they get the most out of this game while they're on high ground. And then they finish it off with really clear comms on what the opponents are doing. For example, they're flanking, he's on height, I'm chopping him out, stuff like that. The next game in the video starts off with another height take. They're on front edge of zone, see the other teams fighting on back edge of zone, and just claim height, and that forces them to drop. They literally have no choice, otherwise they're dead. At this point, they're pretty solidified and they're looking for kills, but Mappy realizes that there's a team ahead of them really close to their lair, and that's the type of team that's gonna go for their high ground. They were only like 2 or 3 layers under, and they were ahead of them in the circle, so they could just crank up and spray them. So Mappy said, focus them, nobody else. Once they drop, that's when they can start looking for kills again. Eventually, they had such few builds that they had to go for a drop-down pump play, and honestly, they were so close to getting it, and this would have given them probably a win. But PKR went down, and Mappy could only survive so long after that. The next game, guess where they're going for? That's right, high ground. They see that height's on back edge of zone, and they just start kind of bloom fighting while chopping. They're trying not to get fried, but PKR gets sniped here, but Mappy just keeps on pressuring, and eventually gets it, and they just crank up, and height's theirs once again. And PKR is actually the IGL, he's been leading the tarps, but Mappy is the one that's kind of leading the height takes and saying when we need to go for it. So that's just another reminder, me as fragger, I gotta start doing that more because we're not playing height enough in my opinion. But that's on me because I should be the one scouting that for the most part. If you guys are trying to work on your height takes, I definitely recommend checking out this video. Like, it was so helpful for me. This game, they were actually able to finish it off from high ground. They kind of just let everybody on low ground fight for the most part and then drop down for that final kill at the very end. Easy dubs from height, bro, it's crazy. In this next game, they had a max pull first moving zone, but I like the way they played this at the start. PKR is playing on top of everybody's builds and kind of just blocking his top and his front with ramps. It's a very conservative tunnel to the front edge of zone while also blocking a lot of the angles. They do get pumped from the side here, but I think that approach is actually really good. Right here, they weren't quite in the zone. They needed to go like one more box, but instead of making one box, because there were so many people around them, they sprint all the way to the other edge of the zone. Usually when I'm one box away, I'm like, okay, let's just go that one box, even though it's a little bit sketch, but that sets you up in a really bad spot for the next rotate. So I think it's smart that they actually go a little bit further here. They're going for a frag, but it ends up getting close to them being on back edge of zone. So they start to move, and look at the way they rotate here. They rotate all the way around so that they're on the dead side of zone. By going further in on that first moving zone, it put them in a position so that they could do a rotate like this. They're on complete dead side, just building off one direction because nobody's on their left. They end up going down trying to get a refresh here, but that was a really good game nonetheless. That was my first time watching PKR, and I'm definitely going to watch some more of his videos. They are so good. Next up, we're going back over to NAE servers and checking out Acorn and Edgy. To start off in their first game on the first moving zone, they immediately go to Elevate. They're just full ramping up to the sky, and then they make a metal box. This makes it easier for them to scout where to go on their next rotate to set them up really nicely. And then they set up this really nice peak box to their side here. They just have full looks down, can get all of their surge, and this is just like a crazy strat. Getting way high up and then setting up this kind of peak box, it's just free surge. The second moving zone rotate, they once again go up layers. They get on this layer where there's another team, but that other team dropped down. And so basically, they're just able to free sprint rotate, blocking their bottoms and tops without building the sides at all. Right here, Acorn is leading them to the front of zone, and they base right in front of somebody's wall. At first, I'm like, bro, what are you doing? But then he throws the chrome, and it makes it so that he can build a box and cut this team off without having to worry about them edit pumping him. Pretty smart way to use the chrome. And then if they choose to fight them like they do here, they're in the better position because they're on the front edge of zone. Right here, they're on the very edge of the safe zone, pressed up against a mountain. Acorn says it might pull back, but if it pulls far, you gotta follow me. And he has a route. He's gonna tank the storm for a bit and get over the mountain to the side. So he knows he's in a bit of a bad spot when he bases under the mountain, but he has an exit plan for the worst case scenario. Acorn and Edgy get a refresh here, and they know that they're second high ground, and so because they're both max mats from that refresh, they just decide to full tarp across the entire zone. They have an unreal amount of mats at this point, so that really doesn't hurt them. It puts them in a great position because they don't take any damage, they still have a ton of mats, and they held this second high ground layer with a lot of mats so they can look up and maybe take height. They do end up going for the height, but Acorn gets weak here, so they decide to give it up, make a layer, chrome it so that it's healthy, and then it pulls max distance, so they just chrome ball to the zone. They set themselves up nice to take the height, messed it up, but got out safely, and they still have a ton of mats. This whole rest of the endgame, they basically just solidify good positions in the zone on more elevated layers, and then look down and just frag below. They chrome their box so that it's healthy from above so that height's not as eager to spray them, and just peek below for the longest amount of time and just get a ton of free kills. In my opinion, the biggest thing that makes Acorn a god tier IGL is the way he rotates. He's constantly able to scout layers. Like the way he tunnels, his crosshair placement makes it so that he's able to like scout low ground, scout the people around him. He constantly rotates in a way where he can easily scout and keep them in a great position to then frag. That type of awareness is something that takes forever to build, and he has it down better than almost anybody I've seen. And then the last thing, the way Acorn and Edgy frag when they're low on mats is pretty cool. They create a tarp and kind of end the tarp with their front of the tarp open so that they can frag ahead of them and really get pressure on. And they just slowly tarp like that on low ground while they're moving forward, fragging everyone in front. That's probably the best approach you can have if there's no tarps to break into, and you just have a couple more builds. Just kind of stagger on that back edge and frag forward. I learned a lot from this VOD review session. I hope you did too. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and sub, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.